we are actually going to be joined over phone by Louis Buff Parry, who is a renowned codebreaker, diplomat, and lecturer. And he has hobnobbed with some pretty, elite people, and he's going to kind of give us his take. So let's go ahead and see if we can talk to Louis Buff Parry.
Hi, Millie.
Hi, Buff. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. We're going through a hockey frenzy. Talk about pathologies right now here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So I had to close all the windows and the sliding glass doors so you didn't hear the crowds outside here.
Okay, so, well, Buff, I know you were telling me a little bit about some of the personal stories that you had in California, how you actually came across some of these weird parties that some of these people that have come forward as whistleblowers have talked about. Now, nothing as extreme as a child sacrifice ritual by any means, but did you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was brought to a party. I wasn't personally necessarily invited, but it was in my hometown of San Jose, California, in a home that is adjacent to, I think it's the largest cemetery in the city of San Jose. And there's no doubt in my mind that I witnessed some activities going on. I didn't witness any sexual activities directly, but activities going on between young males, very young males, and older males. And it was clear to me that the activities happening in the back rooms and so on, I didn't stay there long enough to really do a complete analysis of this, but I was there long enough to get the drift that there was child abuse that was going on, and I took some action. I won't get into details, but I did take some action, and I would say I did witness a process that does occur in many civilizations and cultures, but in this case, it isn't part of a norm or an institution that's ancient. It was something that had to do with the kind of corruption and super fast social change going on that kind of allowed for the public display of pedophilia.
Well, the Dutch banker Ronald Bernard, he said that it's all about blackmail, and that this is the method that the elite use to obtain blackmail, even on, influential people and even politicians. Have you heard any of that stuff, to be true?
Well, I think some of it's true when it involves the setting up of situations so that laws are broken, because otherwise, these accusations don't go anywhere. But if there's a law that's broken, it provides the template to develop the rest of the charges, if you will.
Yeah, I also see this as a gang initiation, in which it's basically like the global elite. They're just like the mafia. It's like, but instead of having extortion rackets, they got aircraft carriers. That's the same thing you're seeing here. This is like a whole. Let's get all the people into this local elite group and get them into the gang, and get them initiated into the secret occults, which is basically the local government.
Yeah, it's a perfect way to obtain blackmail and to create a tight bond of secrecy when you're engaging in pedophilia
exactly.
and these, satanic or Luciferian rituals.
Yeah, it gets people into this mindset that they can look the other way. When you have a city manager that's doing something wrong, that the local county clerk is going to look the other way because the county clerk did something at one of these parties that the city manager saw. So it creates this bond of secrecy that allows this to prosper.
Now I have a question.
I've got to say that in New England and in Britain, the boys' schools and prep schools all practice some degree or other of what you call these initiation rites. And so it isn't something new. I think there is something new. There's a new dimension going on, and it's what we're actually speaking about. A controlled situation that does allow for blackmail and greater social control.
So at this party that you were at, Buff,
specified elite. Pardon?
At this party that you were at in California, were there, I mean, you don't necessarily have to go into names, but were there people that you would perceive as elite that were there engaging in these nefarious activities?
Absolutely. This is a very famous cemetery that this home was associated with or attached to in terms of property. And the individuals living in that home had something to do with the maintenance and I don't mean mowing lawns, but the organizational logistics of San Jose's biggest cemetery. So
wow.
Yeah, no, there's no question that elites are into the kinky stuff and dangerous kinky stuff. They get so bored with endless amounts of pleasure that they become inured and seek out new forms of sensation and pleasure, and that's really what we're talking about.
Exactly. It's really creepy. Is it just a coincidence that it's located right next to a cemetery? And, you're kind of insinuating that it doesn't seem like it was a coincidence. And that just reminds me of actually, I used to work with this girl, and she told me that she interned as a mortician briefly. And she actually talked about a story where she said that people used to drop off, bodies in bags, and that her boss would just put them in there and take the sack of cash. Like they would literally drop off a body with, in a bag and a sack of cash. And, they would take the sack of cash and put the body in the incinerator.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is what's going on here, but I remember reading reports on the Drudge Report past couple of months about cemeteries that got caught up in these mafia things where they were hiding evidence, hiding bodies and coffins. They put like 2 or 3 bodies in one coffin. So yeah, there's always this pattern in which certain ways that people do things that work efficiently, you see it happen over and over again.
They're really smart the way they do it, and that just kind of leads more back to that whole, psychopath, high intelligence, and the scheming that goes on within these people. But Buff, I really wanted to go into this really interesting story that you've been telling me about with Kylr, who has been being investigated for several missing girls. Can you tell us about that, Buff?
Yeah. In fact, tomorrow is the 10th year anniversary of the most famous of the girls who have gone missing and whose remains have not been found. Another girl who he was last seen with has been found dead, or her remains have been found, and that last coupling between Kylr and this other girl was the 10th of September last year. So, they decided, they meaning the ongoing investigators, to really get their heels dug in this time around and see what new information might be dredged up. And what they're getting, I think, is going to be some really big surprises. They acting on some leads, did find 2 sets of remains of young women. One of whom
just so that listeners can actually understand how this may in fact correlate. I know you were talking a little bit about how one of these girls that supposedly claims that Kylr tried to kill her had said that he said he was part of some elite travel club.
Yep, I've got the.
It almost sounds
quote,
like the Thuggy cult from India.
What's that?
The Thuggy cult from India back in the 19th century. They basically
the Thuggy cult.
Yeah, it's exactly what this sounds like. You have the traveling band that would build up trust with people, and then they'd take them off the side of the highway in India, and when they were asleep, they'd kill them in their sleep. So yeah, it's
That's where the word in English thug comes from. By the way,
exactly.
The thuggy. Yeah, they're a very curious bunch. They remind me a little bit of the organizational network called the Hashashin or the Assassins.
Yeah, assassins from northern Iran, the Eagle's Nest.
Northern Africa. In terms of the Ismaili assassins, that were part of the Fatimid dynasty.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the assassin cult that was in Iran that got taken over by the Khans. But I guess I digress.
Now, Buff, can you tell us a little bit about, because we touched on that he might be part of some travel club, but can you kind of touch on his grandfather and some of the interesting evidence and things that are going on with him?
Well, first of all, my quote on the travel club issue, my quote from the files and the documents that we as a profiling group all had copy sets of is, and the girl's name is Gibbon, Candace, and then her last name, said Kylr was part of a travel club. And then I have a line drawn out from that statement saying this is the girl that he tried to kill twice. So, and she went through 3 different interviews, as I was told, by another member of the profiling group. So the idea behind this is that if he was and has been up till recently, because he's in prison again for torching one of the girl's vehicles, who has been found dead, Well, I think let's fast track this and look at the bigger picture, because otherwise there's a whole lot of digressions to this story.
Yes.
We're talking really about several missing people, about a number of missing young women in particular that are associated with Kylr. I got into this when I was flown down to Southern California by my nephews. And I was picked up at the airport, was driven to this mansion, and the woman who had just recently purchased this estate asked me if I was interested in considering profiling, because I was introduced to her as a code breaker, and I had already gone on record for breaking some significant, pretty well-known codes that hadn't been broken before. So I said, yeah, I'm always interested in this. And one thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was part of a profiling group. And that profiling group included Homeland Security, the FBI, 2 police departments, and a whole bunch of detectives, private, public, and otherwise. And people who had skills like mine in code decipherment and decoding, and then the partner I was working with at the time is a PhD neurologist and psychiatrist. So he came in fittingly because of Kylr's profile, and I ended up with copies of Kylr's artwork, his lyrics to the one of the songs that he wrote and performed with his band that he formed. And copies of his paintings, and the primary painting that I have and have done a really thoroughgoing analysis of with experts is incredibly revealing. Once you're on the logical trail that he's laying out for you to follow, and he's actually confessing to more than one murder, but in particular, he's confessing to Kara's absence, if we can put it that way. She had written a handwritten or composed a handwritten analysis of and memory of things that had happened in like the last 5 days. From the time that she had written it, and in this she talks about Kylr and his attempts to kill her goes into all kinds of detail about other aspects of this young man, Kylr, who, if we want to step into the family context, he has a half brother who's just recently gotten a lot of media attention because of warrants for his arrest for other matters, not having to do directly with Kylr. But the day that they found the burned up car of Jessica's is the day that Kylr and his half brother and a young woman were pulled over by the police, and the young woman had a pistol.
Wow.
And she had it outside of any concealment. So I guess she did that to not get arrested, because, if she had it concealed and didn't have a license for a concealed weapon, there may have been trouble there. I don't know all those details, but it's interesting
Buff,
that it was all on the same day.
Weren't you saying how you have a reason to believe that this is not just your average murder mystery, that you believe that Kylr is in fact, being used to procure women for some travel club? And can you tell us what little pieces of evidence that you've come across and how you've kind of formed that idea?
Well, the statements that have been made by people who were associated with Kylr during interviews conducted by local police in Missouri, two different police departments. One is Kansas City, another one is in the specific area just outside of Kansas City, where all of this has happened. And so there are a number of statements that suggest that he was a procurer. Well, we know that he was a procurer of sorts, because he ended up charged and convicted for procuring designer drugs, and very expensive designer drugs.
Weren't those from a CIA agent?
This was fairly recently. What's that?
Weren't those drugs from an agent of some sort, like a CIA agent?
Yeah, that's how they busted him. So they were able to. The authorities were able to then charge him.
What state did they bust him in?
Drug sales. What state?
Yes.
Missouri.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's amazing, because it's like you wouldn't think Missouri would be the state where you'd have these hardcore designer drugs,
Yeah, didn't it seem like he had special pull and connections? Like, who was the lawyer that was representing him, Buff?
It's a family of lawyers, and they're very, very
interconnected,
well known in the Democratic Party. And in historical phases in America, civil rights included, he, for whatever reason, ended up with this set of lawyers, and that, I don't know what that means in terms of them being in the Democratic Party. I mean, obviously, the Democratic Party is not instrumenting this. What's that?
Here's one thing I'm noticing throughout this interview is that we keep coming to this theme of networking, organization. We talk about the Thuggy cult, we talk about the assassins, we talk about, mafia. Now we're talking about this group of people that, I don't know if they've committed any crimes or not, but there's still this network of people. And it goes back to every time we see something nefarious, it's always connected to some network. It's easier for humans to organize when they're connected. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying any of these people are committing crimes. That I'm not too familiar with the case, but people are better. They can conspire when they're connected. And so, so it doesn't surprise me that you have these local cities, governments and whatnot that are having these elitist parties now to create bonds with each other to build this network, to build this connection.
Absolutely. These lawyers, it's a holiday family.
Mm-hmm.
They call the elder patriarch in the family Doc Holliday. Daryl Holliday is one of the sons, who is the attorney of, or was the attorney of Kylr. I'm not sure what Kylr has done at this point with his legal advisors, but up until recently, it was the Holliday family of lawyers who seemed to be rallying around him. I shouldn't maybe use the word rally because that's a bit much, but they always seem to be present, just as a particular member of one of the two police departments I mentioned seems to always be present when Kylr is getting in trouble and getting arrested, even when it's outside of that particular officer's jurisdiction, a territorial jurisdiction.
Yeah.
It just seems like there's some kind of element of organized crime here. Yeah. Doesn't it seem like that?
Beyond that, not because when you say organized crime, you say it, in a manner that reminds us all of what we know about organized crime. This is something a little different. Yes, you're right, Millie. It is organized crime, but it's another variety of it that gets mixed up with eugenics. They made their money off of Trojan prophylactics. There's a whole history to this.
That's his family, right?
Birth control, to this birth control stuff, and to the encouragement of abortion. Kylr would go out of his way to get girls pregnant just to make sure that he could be somehow party to the abortions that would happen.
Wow. Didn't you say that Kylr had occult symbols inside his art that, is being used to unravel where these bodies have been being found?
Well, unfortunately, no one is doing that. No one is following the map that he has created. And this is, to me, one of the most disturbing aspects of this case. There's so much evidence, an abundance of it, that should be followed through. This painting of his has an empty chariot. An empty chariot that's prominent in depiction always means death. There's a fish with its throat slit. And this is exactly what Kara said was going to happen to her, according to Kylr, for something she had done that wasn't to his satisfaction, that he was going to slice her throat. And there is the fish with its throat slit in the painting, and the blood is going from the throat of the fish into a grail goblet.
Wow.
Held by a skeleton.
Wow. Okay, so he's got some occult symbols in there, and
big time.
It seems like some spoiled brat from an elite circle, or his family's connected maybe to an elite circle, and that he's out there, procuring or doing this. And that's just my own opinion on it. That's what it sounds like to me, Buff. But, this stuff is all so interesting, and I'm sure we could talk on forever about it, but we are running out of time, and we've got a lot of other great guests. So thank you so much, Buff, and we will definitely have to have you come back on and give us some updates. And I know you have a lot more really interesting information on this story.
It sounds like you're about to write a novel out of all this, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It wouldn't be a novel. It would be.
I know.
It would
just have to change the names.
Gospel truth. How terrifying that is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Buff. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me back on.